Thanks for pressing play. This is Christopher Lochhead, Follow Your Different, where we aspire to have real dialogues, conversations, not edited and overproduced interviews, with amazing people who are making the world a different place. And man, oh man, do we ever have that today. We're sponsored, as usual, by the good folks at Oracle NetSuite. Learn how to turbocharge the growth of your business today and wrap your arms around all the numbers that matter at netsuite.com/different. On this episode, a truly inspiring person. None other than the 3-foot giant himself, Dr. Sean Stephenson. When Dr. Sean was born, he was predicted not to survive. He has a rare bone disorder that stunted his growth and caused his bones to be extraordinarily fragile. As a matter of fact, he had had over 200 fractures by the time he was 18. Him and his life is an amazing, inspiring, instructive example of how you can make your place in the world, particularly when you can't find one, and how to take a difference that many people would consider a disadvantage and use that difference, transform that difference into an unfair competitive advantage in life. I got to tell you, as public speakers go, there's really nobody who can be compared to Dr. Sean. And, most people would have said that his physical situation would be a disability. And, it's really, he's transformed it into not just a competitive advantage, but a massive differentiator that serves him powerfully as a public speaker. And we talk about that in our conversation. We also talk about why he thinks having a purpose is sexy, how to be completely unstoppable, and a ton more. This is a conversation I loved having. I loved re-listening to it, and I think you're going to love it too. Dr. Sean has worked for a U.S. president. He has shared the stage with many super ding-dongs, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Oprah too. There have been documentaries made about this guy's life, and he's an incredible author. He wrote a great book called Get Off Your Butt, How to End Self-Sabotage and Stand Up for Yourself. Go to lochhead.com to check out more on Dr. Sean and figure out how to find him. And in the show notes, you'll find the key takeaways from this episode. Now, hey-ho, let's go.
And so it was kind of like, I'm a very black or white guy. I think people see me on stage or they see my online videos. They make all kinds of assumptions about who I am, and they're often incorrect. I am a very black or white guy. I'm either going to read a couple hundred books in a year, or I'm not going to read any books in a year. I'm either going to work out every single day in the month, or I'm not going to work out at all. And I'm very envious of people like my wife who are very much gray. They're in the middle. She can do the same thing consistently with ease. It really troubles my brain to have that level of discipline. I'm a sprinter by nature. If you need somebody to get something done under a horrible, painful time limit that they will be shot and killed if they don't do it, I'm your guy. But if you need somebody who is going to pace something out naturally and responsibly, do not call me.
I love it.
And I think it's only been just as of recent that I've decided to out my true self, warts and all. I think I kind of hid that over the years because I felt like if people knew that about me, they wouldn't respect me. And I'm finding out the opposite is true. The more honest I am, the closer people are becoming to me.
Now, that's interesting you say that, because having met you and kind of seen you do your thing in front of an audience and seen you be the center of attention, you exude a certain don't give a fuckness about what anybody might think about me.
That was just been fostered in the last couple of years. That wasn't my last 24 years of my career. It was only probably the last couple of years. And marrying my wife had a lot to do with that. She's a renegade. She's somebody that's self-driven. She doesn't need validation at all. In fact, a whole year could go by, and if I didn't tell her she was beautiful, she wouldn't even care. Again, that just doesn't register on her scale of importance. Whereas I'm somebody that I love to hear from my wife what she adores about me, what she admires about me. I enjoy that verbal praise and that validation. But as of recent, I'd say the last couple of years, I've really stepped into more exuding my true self, not needing the validation of the world. But at the end of the day, I think that human beings, no matter who they are, there's somebody out there that they want to either impress or to get the approval of or to get the acknowledgement from. I don't care how hardcore the person looks. There's usually somebody, and it may only just be their spouse.
Yeah. We all want at least one person to love and accept us, right?
Exactly. And it's not going to be us. We got to find it somewhere else.
Someone else, at least. But you found that you have come on that more recently.
Yeah, I would say, to give you a little personal background, I was in business with my family, specifically my father, for many years, a good 22 years. And I lived at home until I was 31. And having a severe physical disability like mine, my family and I were very close, and that was wonderful growing up. But as I got older, it was challenging because, living at home until you're 31, you're always in groupthink. You're always thinking about like, okay, so is mom and dad going to approve of what I'm saying here on the stage? Is mom and dad going to like what I say in this podcast? And when I finally moved out of the house, and then a few years later went through a very painful business breakup from my father, that's when I really started to come into my own. I'm like, what does Sean really want to say to the world? Even if his parents or his family wouldn't approve. I mean, if you had interviewed me even 3 years ago, there was a different version of me.
Wow, it's been that dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
So did you feel you were curbing yourself for them, or how did you feel?
I never, you can't read the label inside the jar, right? We've heard that before. I mean, when I was in it, I didn't know how much I was holding back my own opinions. I didn't know how much I was not fully being myself because I thought that was me. But then as I got out and not just moved away from home, but then broke away from them in business, I started to see, wow, there's new levels to me. There's new layers to me because I was just sharing what I truly felt. And that's been a journey. I think in our society, we have this mindset, and also in other cultures, big time, even more so, that if I say something that either makes the family look bad or, that my parents wouldn't approve of, or, my siblings or whatever, then there's something wrong and bad with me. If I don't do what the group wants in the family dynamic, and you're kind of looked at as a renegade if you say, hey, you know what? My family doesn't get the ultimate say over my life. I'm going to go pursue this passion or this career, even though it's not what I was groomed to do or what I was educated formally to do. And that's something that I'm hearing more and more. When I finally broke away from my family and business, I was shocked because there was about a year and a half there where we didn't speak. It was pretty turbulent. And I was shocked when I would tell people my story and they would say, yeah, oh yeah, I went through a couple of years not talking to my dad, or yeah, my brother and I haven't spoken in a decade, or yeah, I don't feel connected to my mom at all. And I was like, wow, because in my mind, everybody was always connected to their family because that's the way I was.
Yeah, it is interesting. I never had quite maybe the dramatic experience it sounds like you had, but I mean, I left home when I was 17 years old, and by the time I was in my early 20s, I had moved from Montreal to Toronto, and then in my in my early to mid 20s, left Toronto for California, and so I understand the experience of kind of letting your sort of wings spread, so to speak. And I certainly relate to, um, I have had moments in my life, Sean, where without even realizing it, I realize that I'm curbing my behavior because who I am is not okay with some person in my life who's important to
Hmm.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then did you get into that where it was like you were trying to make them maybe like you more than they did, or behave in a way that would endear you more to them, or how was it in retrospect? How was it for you?
Well, I think it was very unconscious. So let's just address that because I'm not the only one that curbs their life unconsciously to please others. Uh, it was not like something I sat around thinking like, "Oh, I hope to get mom and dad's approval on this today." It was very unconscious, but um, I think a lot of it has to relate to the fact that I wanted them to be proud of me. And that felt so good that in some ways, and there's even, if I'm being real here right now, there's even some embarrassment bubbling up in this moment, what I'm about to say. But their feelings, or the feeling I got from them being proud of me, was more enjoyable than money, was more enjoyable than so many other attributes that I would curb a lot of my decisions to make sure I got that feeling. Um, and I don't know if this is true to all human beings, but I think it happens a lot with people who are maybe in cultures where the family always stays together from birth to death, and they live together and they work together. And when you have that mentality, it feels like treason to say something or do something that doesn't go along with the group, that doesn't
Yeah.
agree with the elders.
Yes.
And to to break away, it was difficult, it was challenging, it was painful. And in some ways, again, a little embarrassment bubbling up here. Uh, I'm 39 years old, but in some ways, I'm maybe more like I'm 19 or 20 in some aspects because, I'm learning things that people maybe felt when they were in college and they finally got to say and do things on their own for the first time. And they failed without anybody watching that would, you know, give them a scolding look. They just failed on their own.
You could just
And
fuck up and have a beer and just go,
yeah,
oh, I fucked up.
exactly. Yeah, I had a moment just yesterday, and this is kind of like the behind the scenes moment. Uh, I've always lived at home with um, my family or lived with my wife, and I have this second house that's just strictly an office house. And I came over here to work, and I needed to cook a frozen dinner, and I had never cooked a frozen dinner. Everybody else has always helped me, and so I had to call up a friend, and I'm like, okay, I can't. I don't have a microwave I can reach right now. I only have a toaster oven. How the hell do you cook a microwave dinner in a toaster oven? And then they said something to me that made complete sense after they said it, but no sense to me before. The friend said, "Did you read the box?" And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "They put directions on the box." I'm like, "That's just freaking brilliant." And, I had never cooked frozen dinner all by myself. And, there's those little things. I've never driven a car, and that's something that I plan to do. There's just a lot of little things that I'm still, I have this decades and decades of education where I help people through their pains and their problems. But in some ways, I'm still learning to walk myself, learning to
Yeah.
navigate this world. And I'm loving the experience of making mistakes. And I'm loving the mystery of figuring out and problem solving things that maybe other people did in their early 20s.
And how much of that is sort of maybe the natural progression of just maturing and gaining life experience? And how much of that is due to some of the physical challenges you have to deal with, or are they connected in any way, or how should I think about sort of where you are in
Yeah, I
life?
think there's definitely a connection between the two. I think the physical challenge maybe amplifies it more. And then having that level of independence. I love my life because every 5 years or so, I try to reorganize it in a way that it didn't look like the previous life. And, one of the things that sickens me that I don't want to do in my life that I see a lot of other human beings do is they'll live one life 100 times. And,
Yes.
if they're lucky to live 100, right?
Right.
I don't want that. I don't want to live always in the same place. When I go back home to Chicago, where I was born and raised, um, I'll go into the local pub that we would go to, in college, in high school, and I'll see the same kids sometimes. They've never left the town, and they're still either being a waiter or waitress or a bartender there, and they're like, "Oh, Sean, good to see you," and they're still there. And if that works for them, that's awesome. But that wouldn't work for me. I need to see different experiences, and I want to live. When the people say, "Do you believe in past lives?" I like to have many lives in this lifetime.
Yeah, that's exactly the same for me. I feel, sometimes I feel like, do you ever have this experience where it's almost like your life is so different today than it was from some other point in your own history that it almost feels like you have somebody else's memories?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
And
you
I
know it
don't.
was you, but it was, but it wasn't, right?
Yeah, I also personally in this doesn't I'm not touching on like morals or ethics here, but like just personality. I don't I wouldn't hang out with my younger versions usually. When I look at my younger version self, the things that he was interested in or he was doing wouldn't necessarily appeal to me. And I'm loving that, and I hope that 5 or 10 years version of me from now wouldn't want to hang out with this guy because he's doing cooler shit and on a next level of intelligence and understanding of the world. There's a great book called The Truth by Neil Strauss, and he talks about how every year you look back in your life, you should have a stack of embarrassing mistakes that you think, how the hell did I do that? Like, what was I thinking? And he gave examples, just, a young child, when you're younger, you can't believe you pooped your pants, when you were a kid. And then you can't believe that you didn't have control of your bowels. And he gives all these different examples. Then you can't believe that you didn't know how to read. And then and all these different
And then you
layers.
can't believe that you drank so much whiskey that you lost control of your bowels again.
Again, in your 20s or 30s or 40s, right? Exactly. Yeah, and so there's this wrongful belief out there that the version of you should always be the same as you get older. But I don't agree with that. I'm constantly breaking the mold and starting over and trying new things and figuring out what do I believe. I'm had a conversation recently with a buddy, and I just turned to him and I said, "Hey, I want to be honest with you." And he's like, "Okay." And I said, "What you just said there, I, I think that's maybe a younger version of me would have thought that was funny, but this version of me didn't think that was funny. That kind of stung, and it didn't feel good. And I just needed you to know that because I don't think that's funny anymore." And he was just teasing me in a way that he thought that I would like, to bond as guys.
Yeah.
And I said, I think you're basing me off of the guy you met 10 years ago. But this guy is not the same guy. And we evolved our friendship in that moment. And he apologized. And I said, look, it's not that you did anything wrong. It's just I want to make it clear how I'd like to be treated now and how I like to see the world and the kind of friendship I'd like to have with you. And fortunately, the friends I choose are pretty awesome. And so he said, I get it. And we evolved our friendship right in that very moment.
Isn't that incredible? And isn't that the hallmark of a great friendship where you can sort of communicate that, yeah, hey, maybe you are different and maybe whatever he was ribbing you about or whatever would have been funny at some point, but for whatever reason you feel differently now. And that A, that you could feel comfortable saying that, and that B, it sounds like he was able to modify his behavior and move forward, right?
Yeah. And let's be real. I didn't feel comfortable saying it, but I did it anyway, right?
Yeah.
Just because the level of maturity that I have now is I'd rather have an uncomfortable moment where there's clarity than avoid the awkwardness and everybody's not on the same page.
Yeah. Now, can I ask you about that?
Yeah.
So I've known and been friends with and been around people in wheelchairs for pretty much my whole life. And I worked in a hospital as a young man. My mom worked in a hospital for years. And so as a kid, I was an orderly. And so none of that sort of environment, if you will, where people are physically different was that surprising to me at a young age. But that said, Dr. Sean, I have noticed that when people with more, I don't know even what to call them anymore, typical physical abilities maybe, meet people in wheelchairs or who are somehow physically different than them, that it can be very unnerving for them. They can be very uncomfortable. The wheelchair makes them uncomfortable. The crutches or whatever it is, the physical difference creates a barrier, and you can see it in people's face. Now, I met you for the first time when you came rolling into a room full of people. And so I saw what happened when you came into that room. And at least best I could tell, nobody had that experience with you. And so my question is, there's something about the way you are with people that when you roll on into the room, you invite people in. People kneel down to come close to you. You have them instantly taking photos with you. I'm not a big selfie guy, but like I immediately found myself wanting a selfie with you, and you're like hugging me and our two bald heads are together and stuff. And so this is a long question, I know, but you make people want to be physically near you, to come to you. You make them comfortable with your physical difference and their physical difference. How are you so awesome at that?
Thank you for acknowledging that. It's something I consciously work at. Um, I believe the way I do it is I take ownership for the space around me. Uh, I take I take ownership for how I treat myself and how I want you to treat me. And so I teach you to treat me with love and respect and playfulness. And I show that just first off in my face, in my energy, and how I carry myself, how I speak about myself. You will never, I won't say never because it's a strong word, but you will rarely, if ever, hear me publicly degrade myself for the comical sake, like self-deprecation. I I put on an energy that this is a man you want to be around. This is somebody who is going to bring value to your life. He's going to get to know you. He's going to make sure that you're being seen and heard as much as you're hearing and seeing him. And so I think there's a couple answers to your question. Number one is I teach you to treat me that way. I do not believe that I don't have this attitude of I demand you. I implore you. I inspire you to want to have fun with me. I also want to give off a vibration of who are you and how can we hang out and how can we be friends, and I I have this belief that I love all human beings. I may not like all of you, but I love all of you. And I think people feel that is I look for the warmth in people. And in the beginning, that might have caused some challenge because I didn't have understanding of boundaries when I was younger, to know like you can love all human beings, but you don't have to go into business with all human beings. You can love all human beings, but you don't have to be romantically involved with all human beings, right? You can have taste and boundaries and all that, preferences. However, I look for what's amazing in people and I pull it out of them and I remind them of what's awesome. I have this thing and I do it more with women because it shows up more than men. But when somebody's talking to me and they tear themselves down, even comically, I'll stop them and I'll say, from now on, you don't have my permission to degrade yourself in my presence. I can't control what you do when I'm not around, but in my presence, I request you not do that.
Yeah.
It's just disrespectful. And I hold a space and a standard for people. And I don't know if a lot of people do that. Another thing that I have a belief is when I meet somebody and they're freaked out about the wheelchair or my size or anything like that, I know that that's a reflection of how they feel if they were me. Like if they had to be me, they think that other people would be uncomfortable. And so it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the reflection of what's going on within them. So I don't take it personally when I see somebody who's all awkward. I take it on as a challenge. I take it on as an educational opportunity to let them know, no, you could have a good time being me. It's fun to be me, and I don't have to say it in words. Sometimes it's just energy. A perfect example, when I was younger, I would go out to the nightclubs and go dancing. And I wheeled up to this one lady, and she just wouldn't make eye contact with me. And I was with another female friend. And all of a sudden, this altercation broke out where my female friend's like, why won't you look at my friend? And then this like awkward explosion happened. And she looked down and she said something to the effect of, he's weird or yuck or something degrading, right? And I didn't take it personally because I knew it was a reflection of where she was in her life and how she felt people looked at her and how she felt people would look at her if she looked like me. And my female friend went berserk, and she like literally almost put hands on this girl, and I stopped and I said, no, stop it. This woman is just a reflection of what's going on in her. Chill out. And like I broke him up and I wheeled away with my friend. And it was this great educational moment for my friend. And I'm like, look, when somebody treats you in a way that's uncomfortable or awkward or demeaning, that's a reflection of them. You don't have to personalize it. You don't have to take that poison on into yourself. So I've done a lot of introspective work. I think that's what shows up. I've done a lot of meditation. I've done a lot of personal growth digging. I journal. So, like I said, I wasn't a huge reader outside of school, but I've been a huge journaler. I'll write 3 pages a day religiously in my journal, and I'm asking myself questions. Something that might sound a little arrogant, and I'm going to take the risk, but I don't walk past a mirror without winking at myself. It's just this thing that I do. I never go past a mirror. Even if I'm by myself in my house, if I go past a mirror, I wink at myself with a little bit of a smile because I feel I deserve that respect. I feel I deserve that love, that connection. And when they have this internal troll that is really mean and their internal dialogue tears them down, I'll pull out a mirror and say, I need you to say that to your face. And they're like, what? I'm like, I don't think you'll do it as harshly. I think if you looked at yourself and you acknowledged yourself and you were loving verbally to yourself, it would be awkward at first, but it absorbs over time. I've done a lot. 3 feet tall and in a wheelchair. My insecurities when I was young, they could eat me alive. And that's why I fell in love with personal growth and studying human psychology, because I needed to navigate this existence in my own petri dish where I could help anybody else.
There's so much awesomeness to unpack there. The first thing, I love the winking, and you wink at others too, right?
Sure.
You and I first met, and you winked at me, and I was like, I think he just fucking winked at me. And so if we go back to sort of who you are in the room, there's an interesting thing that you do that I don't think most people know you can do. And I got taught this early on, primarily in the context of public speaking, but I've learned to use it in life. And that is that you can design, create, manufacture, whatever phrases you prefer, your relationship with people or a person or a room full of people before you enter that room, before you meet that person. You use the phrase create a space for people, right? So you can sort of decide how you're going to be in a room and if you will, pre-create the relationship for people to show up in. And I know this can sound to some people like, self-help mumbo jumbo, but it is an interesting thing when you're in your head, you've pre-built a relationship for the people that you're going to meet. And I see it because I've seen you go into that room and I've seen people's initial reaction of being uncomfortable. And then it immediately kind of goes poof. And it's not because of what they're doing. It's because of the way you are with people.
Yeah, I especially on the job speaking, right? You saw me at work. Like we didn't bump into each other out in a sporting event. You saw me at work, rolling into a room and then getting on a stage. And I've done that for 24 years professionally all around the world. And I have something that I do that I'm happy to share with you now that helps set me up to win and set the audience up to win in that experience. I do a lot of mental rehearsal right before I come into the room. And the mental rehearsal is not, what am I going to say? They're laughing, them having a good time. No, I know that that's going to happen if I do this other thing. And that is, I visualize the pain that everybody's going through. I sit in my shower in the hot water in my hotel room right before I come down into the room. And I feel that hot water in my chest and I close my eyes and I just start visualizing and I'm making up scenarios of what might be in that audience that statistically I know will be. But I visualize the young lady in the back of the room who maybe was sexually assaulted by her best friend and she doesn't know if she needs to report it. I visualize the older couple in the back of the room that the wife needs to be put into a home and the husband is scared because he loves her so much and he doesn't want to let her go and he feels like he's failing her because he can't physically take care of her anymore. I visualize the young guy who started off his business and he's making a ton of money, but he doesn't know his family real well because he's put all his time into his business and his kids are disconnected from him. And I start visualizing all these human experiences that I know exist. And I send everybody that I can in this visualization love and let them know that hopefully today you're going to hear something where you're going to be kinder to yourself. And I'm going to love you regardless of what you've done and what you've not done. And then I finish out this mental rehearsal by sending myself love up on that stage. So I visualize myself rolling back and forth on that stage. And I visualize this chord of energy going from me in the shower to that version of me an hour or two later on that stage and saying, you know what, doesn't matter whether they laugh or not, whether they cry, whether they enjoy you. I just love you for getting up there and having that courage. And I care about you as much as I do them. And that may take as little as 2 to 5 minutes or as long as 10 minutes. And then when I come in the room, I've set the stage.
Yeah.
And I've done this activity for nearly 24 years now. And that's why I beam with that empathy. That's why I love on that crowd right away, because I know that it doesn't matter how they react. I'm going to love them the same way regardless.
And when I saw you, I can't remember exactly how early it was, but my memory is it was fairly early on in your talk. You're on stage. You're physically much more active than I think, certainly I would have anticipated, right? So your physicality is extraordinary. And I actually want to ask you about that in a second. But you're also outrageous very quickly in an almost subversive way. You've got you sexually sort of provocative things that you say, and you sooner or later you're got your back scratcher out and you're kind of humping it and like you're being completely outrageous. And so here's this 3-foot dude in a wheelchair that is creating that space that you just described. But at the same time, the word my grandmother would have used is she would have said, he's a little naughty, that one, right? Like you're kind of naughty, right? And so also maybe share with me where this sort of ability to let yourself really go and on one hand say profound things around overachieving, overcoming obstacles, your learnings as a therapist and everything you've learned with your own life and your own journey, and then at the same time you're telling these off-color jokes and you're behaving like a nutcase.
Yeah. So, well, let's be clear. You saw me speak to that audience, and I gauge and I create different experiences depending on who I'm presenting to.
For sure.
Uh, that
As do
audience,
I.
yeah, that audience I could take to that place quickly. Not every audience, when I go in to speak to, uh, let's say, Dr. Pepper, or Nike, or Whole Foods, or even outside of the country, when I speak to um, Electra in Mexico or whatever. When I go in to speak to different crowds, I have to know my audience, right? So that's the first thing. But what you're referring to is, I'm not a musician naturally. I don't play any musical instrument, but I love music. And I look at it this way. Some of my best speeches, I am willing to use all the notes. I'm willing to use all 88 keys. And I'm not afraid. I don't feel like I have to play within a certain, octave. I don't have to stay in my lane. I can take people from extreme inappropriate to profound and back again. And what I found is when you're able to make an audience cry because you're sharing personal things that they can relate to and that evoke their emotions, if you can make an audience cry, you can make an audience laugh. And if you make an audience laugh, you can make an audience cry. And if you can do both, you can then shift the way they look at themselves. And that's why, I think the best speech is making sure that you make them laugh, you make them cry, and you make them rethink their life. If you can make them laugh, you can make them cry, and you can make them rethink their life. They will get out of their seat and finish with a standing ovation because they haven't maybe experienced that extreme of an emotion in such a short period of time and then questioned, who am I and what am I capable of? And if you can spark that in under an hour, a human being will remember your message.
Yeah. And you are an unforgettable speaker.
Thank you.
You truly are. And when I got home from Best Year Ever Blueprint, and I was sharing meeting you with my wife, Carrie, and talking about you and the fun we had and watching your speech and all that. And she was asking me about your talk, and I shared with her some of the things that you talked about and so forth and so on. And I had this aha. And it's been something I've been dying to talk with you about ever since. And I don't think about it in any competitive sense. I don't know how to quite say this, but if you sort of think about that event you and I spoke at and the landscape of speakers and, tremendous speakers on all sorts of different topics, some super well known, some less well known, but all very, very powerful. Hal Elrod himself, John Berghoff, who's arguably the best sort of architect of a group experience like that, certainly one of the best on the planet. So a lot of high-powered people in front of the room. And I said to my wife, Carrie, I said, here's the interesting thing. So Dr. Sean is an undeniable, legendary public speaker. And there's no question in my mind that if you asked everybody a week after that event, who's the speaker they remember the most, there's no question who that speaker is. It's Sean Stephenson. I mean, there's just, it would be Sean, and then whoever else would be next, depending on who resonated with whatever individual. And while I do speak professionally, I'm not really a professional speaker in I think the way that you are. And I said, and there's nothing anybody who spoke at that event can do that would make that not true. Like I can give the best speech of my life, and I'm a pretty good public speaker. And in spite of the fact that, you and I share a hairdo and all that, I can't get close to you in terms of being memorable to an audience. It doesn't matter what I do. And the big aha for me about this, and I'm going somewhere with these comments, Dr. Sean, is I think it would be very easy for most people to look at you or other people in somewhat similar situations to yours and say, it would be hard to have competitive advantages in pick a field. It would be very easy to skate to the negative and hang out there for much of your life. And the big aha as I was sharing this with Carrie was, isn't it interesting that just in the domain called public speaker, this guy has taken what most people would say is a physical liability and turned it into literally a competitive advantage that because of the fact that I'm not 3 feet tall in a wheelchair, I can't compete with you as a speaker. And there's no greater example to me of taking your different and turning it into an unfair competitive advantage than what you have done with your life. And you even said it in your speech, and I want to get to that in a second. But I just want to take a pause there. And I got to imagine you've thought about this, but you've taken this thing that most people would call a liability and turned it into an unfair asset.
Yeah, I mean, I call my appearance marketing gold. And that's why when I speak to medical professionals, when I go into hospitals or specialists, I'll get up in front of them and I'll say, I don't have a genetic disability. I have a genetic advantage. I said, because try scrubbing me from your mind. Go home and try to forget me and find that you cannot. I'm like herpes to the soul. And that's...
But you're not itchy. Well, I don't have herpes, but you don't itch me in that way.
But you think about me constantly. So here's the thing. I knew at a young age, probably, started in 1994. In about 1994, I'm 49 now. So in my early teens, I knew that I was going to have challenges in the traditional workforce because I tried to get a summer job, right, to make a little extra money. I knew I couldn't be a paper boy. I knew that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable me babysitting their kids, because I couldn't scoop them up in a fire and take them out of the house, right? There were a lot of things that I was going to challenge. And then I went out to try to find a job in the summer. And I found jobs that I could physically do, but I was getting discriminated against because they had preconceived notions. And this is the early 90s, and the Americans with Disabilities Act had just passed, but it wasn't really fully implemented. And I applied to work at a consumer electronics store selling stereos. They turned me down. I tried to get a job being a phone person at a chiropractic office, just taking reservations. I tried to be a dispatcher at a limousine company, all things I could have physically done. But every single time in the interview, they said, you're great. We love you. We love your personality. But what if we need you to go run an errand and get coffee? What if we need you to get something up high? Like just blatant discrimination. And I just got so discouraged. But thank God that I had a wonderful guidance counselor who said, hey, I have an idea. What if I paid you $75 to speak to this other school about what it's like to have a disability? Would you do it? And I'm like, $75 for 1 hour? I mean, in the early 90s, that would buy you a lot of stuff, right? I felt like I was a multimillionaire, right? And I said, sure, I'll do it. And I get up there, and I noticed that there was some huge advantage that I had. And that wasn't just that I looked different. It's that I was comfortable with people looking at me. I had had eyes on me my whole life. And now I was finally getting paid for it. And I thought, this is nice. If people are staring at me for money, I could do this. And that's when I started to decide that I was going to look at speaking like a sport. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I look at speaking as a sport. And I studied the craft. I spent time personally with Les Brown and Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer and Byron Katie and some of the greats. And public speaking and personal growth. And I spent time with them physically and matched what they were doing and learned what they learned. Became a trainer of NLP. I became a doctor of clinical hypnosis. I got all this background to study how to take people on an emotional roller coaster, how to use my body, how to take them and use all 88 keys with them. And my mentality was always, when I get on that stage, I'm going to be the best speaker that not only this conference has, but these audience members have ever heard. And I take that competition still today. So even though I do that empathy training, I also take that aggressiveness. I watch a lot of basketball, and I love those players that play angry, and like a Russell Westbrook that just is explosive, and every play he's going after it. And I feel that way when I take the stage. If I don't do an A+ speech, if I get off that stage and I was an A-, maybe even an A that day, I go to work. I get the film. I record almost all my speeches, and then I take in-depth notes on what could I have done that would have been funnier, more heartfelt, more amazing. And so, yes, I do think my appearance gives me a competitive advantage, but also I went aggressively all into this. There's a lot of hats that I wear, but I want to go down as one of the greatest keynote speakers to have ever lived. And that level of determination I've taken on for the last 24 years.
Well, and you're certainly there. And look, I having given a couple speeches in my life, I know that you don't get to that level without practice. I know that a lot of people say to you, oh, you're such a gifted speaker and you have all this talent. I know people say those things to you, and I know they mean them as compliments. And you definitely have some natural, I don't know what the fuck talent really means, but there's a natural,
whatever. Yeah.
There's something that is drawn you to that for reasons that are obvious when you do it. However, I also know you didn't show up that way on your first speech, did you?
No, not at all. And that's the thing. If you aren't willing to record yourself and then look at your mistakes, you're never going to get great at anything, because what you track improves. It just always does. You want to get better at eating healthier foods, just write down all the shit that you eat every day. Because at some point, you're going to finally hit that moment where you're not going to want to write down that you had another Oreo. You're going to be like, something's got to change here. And as long as you can delete, as long as you won't look at the stats, you'll just continue to perpetuate a negative experience. But if you're willing to have the courage to look at the stats, if you're willing to look at the mistakes you make, if you're willing to look at what's going on in the dollars and cents of your business, when you're willing to look at it, it will get better over time because you will have that irritation as explosive fuel to make you better. I have another friend who is a very successful business person, but he sucks as a speaker. And I know why. It's because he won't look at his own tapes. I'll say to him, why won't you look at him? You're like, I don't need to. I'm a successful businessman. I'm like, yeah, but you suck as a speaker. People leave your audience. How much more of an impact could you make if you put some effort into the craft of speaking? The greatest leaders of all time that we think of were usually amazing orators. And when you have the craft over the language and the way in which you influence people with your voice and your body, it makes a massive impact. What if you just put a little bit of effort, but you didn't want to? And that's okay. However, that's a choice. Everything that we have that's amazing is because we were willing to take the choices that in the beginning were uncomfortable.
Yes. And as a side note, I really think if you're an executive or you're an entrepreneur or you're a leader of any kind, you have to have your ass trained in public speaking.
I believe so.
Because if you're going to be a leader of any more than a few people, then you're going to have to stand up in front of those people and you're going to have to say something that moves them to action and a particular kind of action to produce a particular kind of outcome. Because leaders ultimately get paid to move people to action that produces outcomes that are powerful and meaningful and make a difference, right?
Even in being a parent, even having children, or when you're leading a small team of employees, whatever it may be, you are speaking. Like, everybody's public speaking, period. If you're out in front of another human being, it's public speaking. It's just, what size crowd do you call a speech? What size crowd do you think is public speaking? For me, my heart doesn't race until we're getting to a football stadium. If there has to be a good 100,000 people in the audience for my heart to race and think, oh shit, this is new territory. I remember the first time I did my first basketball stadium with like 25,000 people. That made my heart race the first time I did it, but I loved it, the adrenaline rush of it. But for some people, that's 10 people. That's 100 people. And everybody has their number, but we all have a number.
Yeah, very much. Now, I want to go back to, you were talking a little bit earlier about, trying to get jobs, and some jobs you couldn't do, but some jobs you could do, but the people blatantly discriminated against you. And I think at a high level, there's sort of two options for people in life. There are people who, if you will, find their place in the world. And then there are people who, for whatever reason, can't find their place in the world. Or the world won't welcome them to a place, however you want to think about it, and they have to make their place in the world. And I think in general, the context of our life is, if you think about school as an example, the context is, hey, we're here to provide you an environment for you to figure out where your place is. And whether that's, I try pickles and I like them, or in my case, hate them, so I'm not a pickle person. And then I like this and I don't like that, and I can't do math, but I can do these other things. We're always sort of testing things. Is this me? Is this not me? Do I fit here? Don't I fit here? As a paradigm in life. But very rarely does it get explained to us, particularly when we're younger, like, hey, as you're doing all that, you may actually land in a spot where you discover there's really no good place for you to be successful. You're sort of going to have to make your own.
Yeah, you're going to forge your own trail.
Yes, I'm curious, Dr. Sean, how you think about this finding versus making your place. As my interpretation is, you very much had to make a place for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, even when I became a speaker, I told you I was paid $75 to talk about what it's like to have a disability. But I grew bored of that quickly. I've only done in my entire 24-year career, hundreds of speeches, probably over 1,000 speeches now. 5 where I talk specifically about having a disability, and then nothing else. And those were the first 5. Because at some point I was like, there's more to me. That my disability is about 5% of who I am. It may be 95% of what I look like, but it's only 5% of how I identify with myself. And I had to then break away, because I also noticed when I just got seen as a disabled speaker, there was only a certain fee or a budget that I would ever have accessible to me. And I was like, fuck this. I want to be a corporate speaker. I want to get, the $10, $20, $30, $40,000 keynotes. And just talking about what it's like to have a disability, that was getting me the $500 speeches. And, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what juices you and that's what you feel called to do. But for me, I wanted growth. I wanted explosive growth. So I had to carve my way into that field. And, there was little things that I've had to do over my career to make sure that I wouldn't get pigeonholed as a disabled speaker. I had to make sure that I wasn't on the cover of my books, so that I wouldn't get passed over when people were buying books out there that didn't know who I was, because they're like, oh, this is a book about the disabled. No, take me off the cover. I want you to find out later that I have a disability. Making sure that I pushed into conferences and got in front of people and wowed them the first time where they forgot about my disability. I had to both find it and forge it at the same time, as well as accept and see what was coming to me. Because for me, I saw that in the field of speaking, my appearance put me head and shoulders over other people when you're looking through a stack of brochures of speaking. but also I had to make sure that I didn't just rest on my appearance. I had to massively increase the talent. So, every single person alive, there's going to be things that are going to come to you that are going to be natural, that you're going to go into and you're going to do well right away. And then there's some things that you're going to have to get the rubber mallet out and, bang it around until you get it to fit in. And that's okay. My family, one of the things that I credit them for is they taught me to rule with a velvet hammer. Don't be so militant and nobody wants to hang out with you, but also make sure that you let people know you have some weight behind you and you're not going to be messed with. And when you're finding your place in this world, there's going to be times where people are going to be like, nope, we don't allow your sexual orientation in here. Nope, we don't like your gender. Nope, we don't like your age. We don't like your color, your skin, or your appearance, this, that, and the other. And you're going to have to hold your ground and say, you know what, I get that it makes you uncomfortable because you've never spent time with somebody, but become friends with me and then tell me I can't do this. Get to know me as a person first. And so there's going to be times that you're going to have to push your way into something. Maybe you'll be the very first person. I remember in my early 20s, I was looking for mentors on love. And I wanted to find somebody who could confidently tell me that if I followed their system, I would find a healthy relationship, that I would get into a loving, sexual, emotional, deep, connected, soulful match. But I couldn't find anybody that was out there teaching people with disabilities how to find love, because we have different challenges that we experience. And I finally did find a mentor. He didn't teach me how to do it. He taught me that if there's not a person on this planet that you can find as a role model, that means it needs to be you. And I went for a few years and I taught people with disabilities, how do you find love? And then, of course, I got bored of that and I started teaching all men, how do you find love? How do you find healthy relationships? And, there's been times in my life where I needed to be the mentor that I was desperately seeking.
I want to make sure I heard exactly what you said. If there isn't a role model for something you want to learn in life, then it's you.
Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
Absolutely.
And so if I was a disabled person looking for everything you just described, a true partner, a 360-degree partner, physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, sexual, the whole thing, what advice would you have for me?
I've later learned that it's the same advice I'd give any guy, not just a guy with a disability. But to specifically target on that, since that's your question, is I would say two things. One, be very clear on what are your deal breakers? What are important for you that need to appear? And make sure that you never bend on your deal breakers. And that's in their selection process. And then the second in the attraction process is, who do you need to become that would attract that kind of person? Do you need to be more confident? Do you need to have a better self-image? Do you need to be more financially stable? Do you need to be more playful, or do you need to back it down and not be as much of a clown? You need to mature a little bit. What shoes do you need to grow into that the person you're looking for would be attracted to? And that was the big changer for me. Is I found that I had to make peace with never finding the love of my life, but also never stop looking. And that's when I found her. I was on the mission. I was on my path. I kissed a lot of frogs, but then I finally met my princess, and it turned into this amazing love affair that has been going on for 9 years, happily married. And, there's nobody best suited for Sean Stephenson than Mindy Kness.
And the interesting thing, I got to ask you about this, because I think it's good advice for all guys. Chicks really dig you, man. No, they do.
Yeah, well, that's not an accident. There's two things that I do that make me attractive. One is confident, and two is a sense of humor. Because when you're confident without being arrogant, you let a woman know unconsciously that you have her back because you have your own. That's first of all. Second is a sense of humor that, look, women, especially now that we see it in our society, there's a lot of pressure on them, a lot of challenges, stereotypes, all these different things that they're facing. They have all the stress in their body. If they can come across a guy that can make them giggle, if they can come across a girl that can make them giggle, if they can come across somebody that can relieve that tension with laughter, they'll spend more time with that person and they'll be drawn to that person. So you mix that sense of confidence with that sense of humor, and you have something that's very appealing. I mean, I got on the Jimmy Kimmel Live show about 10 years ago. I had a men's product teaching men about confidence and dating and improving their sexual relationships and all that. And Jimmy Kimmel said, "How do you do this?" And I said, "Because let's be clear, Jimmy, women don't want a tall, dark, and handsome man. They want the feelings they think they'll get from being with a tall, dark, and handsome man. If you can help pull out those feelings in that woman, she'll have no choice but to fall for you. You just need to know how to strike those feelings."
That's incredibly powerful. And yeah, regardless of, I think a lot of men need to understand that. It's like, it reminds me a little bit of, I always go back to this one in my head. Remember the movie Napoleon Dynamite?
Sure.
There's that scene in the movie where he's I forget his buddy's name in the movie, but he's talking. Pedro, duh, of course, vote for Pedro. I drink too much. But there's a scene where he and Pedro are in the hallway at school, and he says to Pedro, he goes, "We need to get some skills. Women want guys with skills."
Nunchucks.
Something, exactly. Nunchuck skills, something. Right. And I look at some of these younger guys and they're like not doing very well. And it's like, okay, well, to your point, Sean, are you the kind of guy that the kind of woman that you're interested in would be interested in?
Well, it's even more than skills. I think there's something above that. And that is, do you have a purpose for your life that you're pursuing?
Okay.
I think that is the sexiest thing on the planet.
Let's get into that. Why do you think purpose is so sexy?
Because then you're not wandering and floundering and just drifting. You have a goal and you're headed toward it. And it's not even a goal, it's an aim, because you'll be heading towards it for the rest of your life. As long as you're alive, you're on that purpose. And I think it's sexy because it's bigger than just your own selfish desires. You're doing something that's greater than you. One of the reasons why I love Mindy so much is she knows that my life purpose is more important than our marriage. And that's what makes our marriage so strong.
Hold on.
Because
my life, handsome. Say that again for me.
Yeah. My life purpose is more important than our marriage. And my life purpose is to rid this world of insecurity. And if I'm pursuing that, our marriage is strong and powerful. The moment I start to put my marriage and just serving you is more important than my mission, we collapse.
And why is that your purpose?
It's something that came to me in a deep revelation. It's something that when I shared it, because I had a mentor that pulled it out of me. And I've got about 21 different mentors in my life and different areas. And this one mentor was specifically chosen to help me find my purpose. And I felt called to have this mentor in my life for that. And when it was clear that my purpose was to rid this world of insecurity, he said he could feel the hairs in the back of his head, the back of his neck stand up. And he said, "Sean, if there was anybody on this planet that the world would listen to about you don't have to be insecure, it would be you. And now you need to go pursue that for the rest of your life." And when he said that, I checked in with my own intuition just to make sure it wasn't just my mentor's opinion, but that it was in alignment with my own intuition, and it clicked and I agreed and it felt right and true and has every day since. And it's in my bones. I feel it. When I want to quit, all I got to do is spend just a little time with my purpose. Just reminding myself, why were you born again? What are you here to do? And it will dust me off and pick me up every single time, get me out of bed. Doesn't matter how many screw ups, how many things I might invest in financially that don't work, or time-wise that fail, or a partnership that didn't pan out. It doesn't matter. The trials and tribulations of Sean Stephenson are secondary to me. The primary is, are you on this path? Are you pursuing that purpose to show this world we do not need to be insecure? Because I have a vision in my mind that 3 generations from now, kids are going to ask their parents and their grandparents and their great grandparents, is it true that people used to kill themselves because there's this thing called suicide? Did that really happen? Did people really need to go on antidepressants, Grandpa? Like, I see a world where we don't make that the commonplace. I see a world where that is abolished. There's some things we're not going to get rid of, but there are things that we can get rid of from the human race. And I think insecurity is something that genetically doesn't need to stick around anymore.
That's awesome. What advice would you give others who are trying to find, they're different, trying to find their purpose and ground themselves the way you've grounded yourself?
Yeah. Get mentors. I would tell them, can I shamelessly plug something?
You can do whatever you want, man. This is you
I love
hanging out.
I love it. So I would tell them to go to theunstoppableformula.com. That's theunstoppableformula.com. I teach a course that you can get for free there, and it builds far more than I can do in this conversation here on the top 3 things that you need to do to get unstoppable. And one of them is to find your purpose. And I go deep into the things that you're going to need to do to create that. But ultimately, you need to be pursuing something that lights you up, that you're willing to work on every day and not grow tired of. I don't grow tired of speaking. I might grow tired of getting speeches. I might grow tired of audiences. I might grow tired of a lot of things, but I don't get tired of speaking. The craft is something that I know what I'm capable of, and I know I haven't scraped the surface yet. I know that I have a lot more work to do. I love like I said, the sport of basketball. And they asked Kobe Bryant once, do you think your fans are too hard on you? And he said, absolutely not. I only have 5 championship rings, but I feel like I should have had a ring for every year I was in the league. That's the kind of level of standard I held myself to. And I resonate with that. The people look at my career, they look at what I've done. And if I'm being real and I'm ripping my chest open for people to know what's really going on the inside, I would say, I don't feel like I've done anywhere near what I could have done by now. And that's why I'm glad I'm still here, because I got more time. If you're still alive, it lets me know your purpose is not complete. When you die, your purpose will be fulfilled. It'll have been fulfilled. I love what the great Deepak Chopra said. He says, when I die, I will know I have done what I needed to come here to do. And that was enough. And I resonate with that. When my eyes open up in the morning, I'm a little different than most. I've been close to death a couple times in my life. I've had a lot of physical pain. I've gone through a lot of physical challenges. I'm amazed when my eyes open up. I'm like, holy shit, I guess you got more. I guess that God's not done with you yet. And that's okay. I get excited. I pop out of my bed and I get the day going. And, not every single day, but I'd say most days, because of the way I set up my life, I am willing to pursue this purpose. And you need to be different. You need to be able to find what lights you up and what is something that you can get paid to do that's in that realm. How can you do that? How can you find a vocation that really is paying you to do what lights you up? I love speaking so much. There's a certain number of speeches I do a year where I'm not even paid, because I know that when I get up on that stage, it is going to be so damn fun, and I'm going to have worked on my craft and prepared something for them that I wanted to do for free.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Hallelujah. Well, Dr. Sean, I want to be super respectful of your time. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we kick out of this one?
I would just tell you, especially speaking to the men here, because this is a little foreign, really work on taking better care of yourself. Uh, Put together a list of the things that you need to be doing to care better for yourself and the women there as well. But, I find that men think that self care is a little bit more of a feminine thing. I'm not going to go get a massage. I'm not going to go do this. No, you need to take great care of yourself and you need to learn how to love yourself and, wink when you go past the mirror because that level of self love it's going to take you to places and it's going to put light where there's darkness and it's going to show in your eyes when you put that level of dedication into loving yourself.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sean. You're awesome. It has been great getting to know you. I can't wait to welcome you back. I hope you'll be a regular with me.
Absolutely. Happily.
Whenever you're in the Bay Area, I want to see you if that's possible. And
Absolutely.
I can't wait to see you again, brother.
Love you, man. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you too, Sean. Yeah, Dr. Sean Stephenson. Incredible. Now, if you don't know your numbers in business, then you don't know what's going on. You don't know your business. And so today, more than ever, you need to stay on top of the seminal numbers that drive your growth and drive your success. That's where the good folks at NetSuite come in. Imagine having every critical number you need to manage and grow your business at your fingertips, on your smartphone, on your tablet, anytime, anywhere. That's what NetSuite makes happen. NetSuite is a complete business management system for high growth entrepreneurial businesses and, interestingly enough, a lot of nonprofits in many different industries. They're actually the number one company in cloud ERP, the category king, if you will. And with NetSuite, what you get are awesome dashboards that allow you to stay on top of sales, orders, finance, accounts receivable, accounts payable, your inventory, and even your HR. Thousands of the best-known companies and brands and nonprofits use NetSuite to manage and grow their business, and it's available to you, and it's surprisingly cost-effective. As a listener to this podcast, NetSuite is offering a free 1-hour growth review with an expert in your industry. So do yourself a favor and check out netsuite.com/different to set up your growth review today. And if you want to get a hold of us, you can send email to us at blackhole@lochhead.com. And my nephew has told me that my social media game is weak. And so if you want to check out my weak social media, I'm at Lochhead on Twitter and on Instagram. And we do have a Facebook group if you're into that sort of thing. All right. We would like to thank the amazing Dr. Sean Stephenson. Check him out at SeanStephenson.com. And his amazing book, Get Off Your Butt. Speaking of amazing books, with all due modesty, the #1 Amazon bestseller, Niche Down, How to Become Legendary by Being Different by Heather Clancy and myself. Our good friends at onelifefullylive.org. This is the nonprofit helping you dream, plan, and live your best life. The amazing content on growwire.com. This is a new website, and there is awesome stuff to read. There's an awesome YouTube TV show, so to speak, and a great podcast that I recently guested on. Check out growwire.com. Now, if you're somebody who's trying to get a lot done in life, maybe it's time to hand off some of the more mundane tasks to someone else so that you can focus on what really matters. Check out Bottleneck Virtual Assistants, where you'll learn about the power of a virtual assistant at bottleneck.online. And the amazing folks at the Front Row Foundation. This is a nonprofit helping people with life-threatening diseases and challenges have an experience that they will never forget. Check out frontrowfoundation.org. All right, I need to remind you that this oddcast is the sole property of the Lochhead Oddcast Network, and we would love you if you shared it. All rights do remain perturbed. We must warn you that this oddcast is clearly produced in a studio that does contain nuts and therefore tends to go better with libations. Never forget that a massive disadvantage can become an unfair competitive advantage if you'll allow me, follow your different. Don't be lame. Get out of the passing lane. Listen to Blue Rodeo. Remember, if you haven't changed your mind lately, how do you know you have one? Thank you, Candy Dandy. I love you, Mom and Dad. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Today, our deepest apologies go out to Doug Parker, Chief Executive of American Airlines. Sorry, Dougie. We just ran out of time for you. That's it. Thank you so much for investing part of your life with me. And if you're a regular listener, it means the world to me that you hanging out. And if this was your first episode, I hope you loved it. Until we're together again, follow your different.